Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. So what we're going to talk about today is why I went with a 98 to 06 TJ Wrangler instead of an 07 to 11. So I do want to say, I've said this in other videos, that I think the 4.0 inline six is one of the best engines that Chrysler's ever made. You see these Jeeps with just tons and tons of miles on them, and they're still trucking, and people still want outrageous amounts of money for them. I think it's crazy the amount of money that people want for these, especially with like 250,000 miles on them. You'll still see them with like 250,000 miles, and they'll want like, I don't know, $8,000, $9,000 for them. Now they do have lifts and stuff usually on those, but still that is a ton of miles, but they're still trucking. And you see some of them with over 300,000 miles. I read an article today about a guy that sold his that had 330,000 miles on it and it was still running. So these engines, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx mine, usually go for a long period of time, which is why I chose a TJ. Now, I have some people I know, I wouldn't call them friends, I don't talk to them a lot, but they are Jeep people. They're online. I don't technically know these people, I guess, which is why I wouldn't say I call them a friend. But, you know, I talk back and forth with them, and they were telling me they deal with Jeeps a lot. They actually do that for a living. And they were telling me to stay away from the 2007 to 11s with the 3.8 liter V6, I believe it is, because people were having some problems with those engines. Now, I do like the body style of those. That is the more modern body style, you know, whereas this has the metal fenders, which fenders and fender flares are plastic, but I'll probably replace those with the metal flat ones anyway, and I would have done the same thing to one of those, so that's not a big deal here or there. But the inside's a little more modern, and they do say they ride better. But that engine, using the oil consumption of the engine, actually made me nervous enough that I didn't even consider those. After they told me that, I went online, I did some research, and I seen people online that was talking like using like a quart of oil every like 800 miles or something. I mean, it was ridiculous how much oil. And even people that liked their Jeep was like, yeah, I got a little bit of oil consumption, but I still like my Jeep. And I get that. I do get that. But doggone, I mean, especially people that had under 100,000 miles and they're using a quart of oil and oil change, that's ridiculous, in my opinion. And then they went to like the 3.6 liter engine in 2012 and up, and they were like, the 3.6 seems to be a good engine. The 4.0 is tried and true, but that 3.8 was not a good engine. Stay away from those. And that's why essentially I looked at the TJs. Now there again, I had a budget, but if you'll notice, if you go online and start looking, a lot of the 07, 08s, and even some of the 09s are in the same price range as the TJs. You know, especially like an 05 or an 06 TJ. I think that's some of the better years for these Jeeps. I was lucky enough to find an 05 in my price range. There's actually a 2007 right here for sale, and I did stop and look at it. As soon as I seen it as 07, I just walked away from it. But I do think these are some of the best model years that you could get in them. And I got lucky enough to find one. But like I was talking about before, you find these for the same price as them. Now, there has to be a reason for that. You don't just find older vehicles that are as expensive as newer vehicles when it's still a Jeep. I mean, there has to be a reason for that. And from my research, that oil consumption is truly an issue. It's hit or miss too. Yeah, I know online, when you're reading stuff online, you have to take it with a grain of salt to an extent, because people are going to write about their problems, and people usually don't write about how great something is. Very seldom when you're reading a review of something, do you read a review that's talking about, hey, this is awesome. Most time you read a review and it's like everybody's talking about the issues they have. And I get that, but I've seen a lot of Jeeps have that issue. And then the people that was, you know, that does that for a living started talking about it. I knew there was a real issue there. Now, if you're looking at Jeeps, I'm not telling you don't buy an 07 to 11. You make up your own mind, because, you know, essentially we all have to make up our own mind. It's our money. I make my money, you make your money, and we can spend it on what we want to, and nobody can tell us otherwise. So if you want an 07 to an 011 and that's your price range and you're comfortable with that, go ahead and buy that Jeep. I almost did buy one until I heard about that, and that's actually what happened. I'd mentioned that I was looking at an 08, I think it was, and they said, is there a reason you're looking at the 08 in particularly? And I was like, that's the newest one I can find in my price range. And they were like, there's a reason for that. And then they started telling me about the oil consumption problems, and then I started doing my own research and found out that was pretty true. So then I was like, nope, and I dipped back into the TJ realm. Now, you see a lot of these TJs on the road still, and you know, that says a lot for the vehicle, so I felt pretty comfortable buying one with lower miles such as this. Now, I am going to put a 190-degree thermostat in it. It runs dead nuts in the middle, but it will go up a little bit. I have noticed that the heat gauge moves just a little bit back and forth, and that may be normal for a Jeep. This is my first Jeep, but I am going to try to get that temperature down just a higher, so if it fluctuates a little bit, it never goes above halfway. And it doesn't go high above halfway now, but it does just a higher, and I'm a stickler about stuff like that. So I'm actually fixing to go buy a thermostat now, and I'm going to do a flush on the transmission and then put in the 190-degree thermostat and take out like the 205 or 210 or whatever comes in stock. But there again, that 3.8 liter, you got to make up your own mind about that. Do you feel comfortable enough buying one? I didn't. Now, you know, I'm no expert on Jeeps. I'm new to this game as well. But like I said, I talked to some experts and they said stay away from them. So I did. If I could have afforded a 2012 and up, I would have probably got one of those, just because it's newer, and newer vehicles seem to do better on YouTube. But I do plan on taking this thing off-road. I'll do some footage of that and stuff like that. And I think people like watching people go four-wheeling and go off-road and stuff like that. So this is actually an old enough vehicle. It's still in great shape, but it's an old enough vehicle that I don't have to worry about getting scratches on it. You know, I'm not going to take my $55,000 Tundra and go through the bushes and scratch it all to pieces. I'm just not going to do that. But I will take this Jeep and do that. So that was another reason. I didn't want to spend, you know, $25,000 on a 2015 Jeep or 13 Jeep and then take it off-road and scratch it all to pieces. That's just not what I was about. So I bought an older one, and that I wouldn't worry about as much, because I knew if I bought a newer one that, sorry, I went over railroad tracks. I knew that I wouldn't do what I wanted to do with it, and I wouldn't give you all the content that I wanted to give you. So there again, I go with an older Jeep. I can do anything I want to it and not feel bad about it. And this thing has probably lost about as much value as it's going to lose. You know, if you do lifts and stuff on Jeeps, you actually can get some of that money back out of them. It amazes me the value these things hold. So if I do a lift and bigger tires, which I am, I can actually recoup some of that money as long as I put on quality parts. And if you all watch the channel, you know that I do quality parts. I don't do junk parts and stuff like that, or cheap parts. And I'm not dogging that stuff out, but I try to do quality parts for the channel. Because I found out if you cheap out on something like a lift or tires or something like that, you're going to have to go back and replace that sooner, and it's just going to cost you more money in the long run. And that's essentially why I went with the TJ over like a 7, 8, or 9 that was in my price range. Again, you have to make up your own mind if you feel comfortable with those engines. I just didn't. I appreciate y'all watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.